what makes us attractive is the Mount Henry story hasn't been told before. As I said, it's the Stephen Bradbury. So it's almost coming out as a fresh-based asset that nobody's heard about, that has 1 million ounces from day one. And the asset's absolutely amazing. So the good thing about this asset is that it's been at the back of the pack. It's been in people's portfolios for 30 odd years. It's been drilled very lightly down to about 100 metres. And in that 100 metres across 3 deposits, we've defined nearly 1 million ounces of gold. We're not going to be constrained by saying we have to go down this pathway of looking at this plant, looking at this time frame. We're going to drill this thing, see how big it is, and then let the ore bodies tell us what we need to do to maximise value from it. We got everything done in 2 weeks, made them an offer they couldn't refuse. They came on board at a 20% shareholding, and they've made a pretty good return on those 20%. If you're in mining, this is the place to be. And so my aspiration was get the exposure at Mod, ride that through to $1 billion and see where we go. And we're not the dumbest guys floating around, but we're also not the smartest, but we can certainly have a crack. So it was about then where I was like, yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Like, I reckon I could have a crack at that.
Welcome back to another episode on the Gold Room podcast. Today, lucky enough to have Jeff Sansom from Alicanto Minerals. Jeff, thanks very much for joining me, mate.
Thanks for having me. It's amazing to be on here, mate. I've seen a couple of the guys on the podcast you've done before, so it's an honour to be on here and talk about things.
Cool, mate. Look, as you know, we get everything started with the life and the times. The feedback from people viewing the episodes is really whether they like a supplier or whether they like the mining industry in itself. Everyone likes to come and watch the life and the times. So let's get into that.
Yeah. Well, mate, not an Australian born. Mum and Dad met up in London. Dad was from Africa. Mum was from Perth. They got married and moved over to Swaziland, now called Eswatini, a small little landlocked country in between South Africa and Mozambique. So we grew up there, 10 years we lived there, moved over to Perth in the early 90s. I think the family was looking ahead and, what are the kids going to do when they grow up? And, we didn't have a sugarcane farm and we didn't have a manufacturing business. So the opportunities for work in Africa were pretty slim. So moved over here in the 90s, lived with our granny for, 5 or 6 years, and then
in the house or a little granny flat out the back.
No, there was There was 6 of us in a house, so we shared bedrooms, and
awesome.
It was a 2-bedroom house in that we all shared in, and so that was our introduction. Moved into a place just down the road from Granny's house. Mum's family's here, so we had a bit of a family base here, and it made. Most of the South Africans kind of move towards Perth or then move forward on. So
or New Zealand and then to Australia.
Yeah, exactly. And so when it came here, we weren't allowed to play footy. We had to play rugby, and Dad never let us sort of watch footy. So hung around with a lot of Kiwis and a lot of South Africans as a result, and played rugby. So went to a public school, Hollywood High School. That was the mean streets of Shenton Park. Was never really academic. Knew I had capability, but kind of just coasted through primary school and high school, and then wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do at uni.
Finished high school though? Did like year 12?
Yeah. Got through it. I think, mate, I wanted to be a physio when I left high school. So I
really like these parts of everyone's stories of what they wanted to do at high school versus where they are now at the tippity top.
Yeah, well, I think I didn't want to be a doctor, a policeman, or fireman. So those are pretty straightforward pathways of what you want to do. My dad was an accountant. My mum was a teacher, and then she moved into adult literacy. So didn't really have a vision of what I wanted to be, and then so I thought, I like sport, so I'll do physio.
Were you any good at rugby? How tall are you, mate?
6'4".
Yeah,
mate, I was good. I wasn't Alex Rivera good. I was, mate. I played a couple of games of first grade for West Subiaco at the time, so they were just down at Rosalie, and Richard Hyde. I used to play with Richard Hyde from WAF. Still have a bit of a connection with the rugby club down at. They've now moved to Scarborough. So, mate, I had a crack and did my shoulders. I had a shoulder reconstruction, hooked my back as well. Had back surgery at the ripe old age of 20. So gave that all up pretty early. But mate, I absolutely loved rugby. It was and that was the hard thing was rugby was, it was such a collegiate game where you got a lot of guys, well, a really tight knit group of people that are really supportive, and you got lots of people to look up to, and it's a physical game, and absolutely loved it. When I gave it up, kind of struggled to find something that really had that same level of camaraderie and also physicality. And so then, moved into boxing and tried that, and moved into I did surf rowing for a while, and we did pretty well there. And so just tried every other sport under the sun, but couldn't really find the same level of physicality and mateship that I had at the rugby club. So that was it's been probably 20 years since I gave it up, and you still kind of look back and go, geez, that was such a good time of my life. I absolutely loved it.
Who do you follow in the rugby, mate? With the South Africa, Australia?
I still have deep connections with South Africa, and I think through the 2000s the Australian team didn't really win my favour. So it's either Springboks or the All Blacks. I absolutely love watching the All Blacks play. And a lot of guys in the office are Kiwis as well, and so I just sort of resonate with the Kiwis and South Africans. But the Wallabies, they're fantastic as well. But I think
you look like one of those I've got to say that right now sort of thing.
A little bit, but yeah, still I just love watching high level rugby. It's just a cracking sport.
Cool. So secondary education.
Yeah. Sorry. So moved into uni. Didn't get the scores that I needed to get into physio. I think you needed you need to be in the top 5% or something, and I was a shade under. I was in maybe top 10% or whatever it was, like the ATAR that we had. So I didn't get into physio. I got into so I was like, okay, my next option is do sports science. Didn't get into that, and then the next option was just a general science degree. So I started as oenology and viticology, which was winemaking.
Okay.
To start the general science degree, to move into sports science, to move into physio. Started in the agriculture department at UWA, and it was all the same base science units as engineering, plus everyone else that had to do science. We were all in the same cohort. Kind of went through there, made some really good mates in the agricultural department, and so I was like, bugger it, I'll just stay in this. And then I moved into natural resource management, and I came out as a soil scientist because I found I found that I had a bit of a passion for soils for some unknown reason. So I finished up there, got honours, moved into consulting. So I was a contaminated land consultant. So basically going to, if there's a petrol station that's had a leak from the underground tanks and they're selling it and they want to become a childcare facility, you've got to make the soil and groundwater safe for kids to play in it.
I'd only just learnt about this the other day. The guys that own Varsity in Morley.
Yep.
So there was a laundromat right next door, and for 50 odd years, 50 plus years, and then they wanted to extend the building, and so they had to over 18 months they kept drilling down, waiting to taking a sample because they bowled this laundromat, and then kept doing these soil samples, going down further and further for the piles and everything that they needed. Just kept coming back with no. The bloke said, for 50 years, all the industry around Morley had been taking their dry cleaning there, and all the toxic chemicals that had come, from whatever industry, from all of them, had just been going there, and obviously the drainage or whatever they were doing, they weren't keeping all the just flushing it down the drain.
Well, and people just used to dig holes, right, and just pour oil in the soil, and so that's where I started. And then so I was there for a little bit. I was there for probably 10 years. But during that time, I didn't have any finance background, so I started studying, and I got a graduate diploma of applied finance and investment, and that kind of got me thinking, oh, all right, well, I'll keep going. So and I was focused on environmental science at that time. Thought I could get to the top, and I could be someone, I could be a executive in a environmental science place. then the kind of everyone else was making heaps more money than me in the mining sector.
You had
So
mates
it's like,
that had gone into mining?
yeah. Whether it was sort of mining or mining adjacent, they were working in and around the mining space, and I was a consultant working for some of the miners.
Do you remember what you were on?
Yeah, when I first started, I think it was $42,000 a year.
What year?
That was 2005, 6.
Okay.
And then other mates were working in the mining game, earning 100, 110, 120. I was like, wow, that's pretty spectacular, isn't it? I'd go out to the Claremont Hotel with $20 and be dusted in 5 pints, and then you go home and you're like, geez, okay, well, how do I get more money?
Yep.
And so that was, the pathway was then, okay, so need to do some more studying to get more finance, so I can be a manager, and that was the drive. And then I had some mates that started studying. Oh, actually, sorry, I then moved to BHP, and I got a job on site up at
Environmental?
Yarrie. Yeah. So a small iron ore mine up in just, I think it's about 500 k's east of Port Hedland was a really small 2 million tonne producer called Yarrie, and I think it was significant because it gave them access to the rail. So it was a really small scale asset, and so I was the environmental officer on site, helping with permitting, helping with environmental monitoring and all that sort of stuff. As a part of that, I said, look, I want to move into the corporate space, so I'm going to start studying. So a friend of mine, Luke McFadgen from Minerals 260,
Yep.
He was studying a Masters of Mineral Economics at Curtin. And he's like, mate, everybody at BHP studies this, and you're on the management track if you do this. So I was like, well, okay. Got into that, and over the next couple of years, used that to leverage into positions at BHP. And so I moved from site after 18 months. I moved into the corporate office in Perth as more of it was a health, safety, environment and community analyst. And that was sort of the ESG name back in the day. So I moved into corporate ESG, and then I can't actually remember how it happened, but I got a call from Melbourne saying, you've progressed to an interview stage for an investor relations analyst.
You applied?
Well, I don't remember. I have no idea how it happened. So I just got this call. I was like, oh, cool. What is that job? So I had no appreciation for what it really meant. And, back in those days, I was punting stocks and micro caps, and I was having a crack at trying to make some money punting. I was like, oh, okay, this is pretty interesting. I could talk to the people who actually know about stocks and maybe make some money on that front as well, and move into more of a corporate opportunity. So, I had a girlfriend at the time. We'd probably been dating for 5 years or something. I was like, oh, look, I got this job in Victoria, and I reckon it will really help me in the future leverage into management role. And she was like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. She was studying physio at the time. And
you've got a bloody thing for physio, eh, mate?
Yeah,
Probably those injuries, I reckon. You're like, I better
yeah.
stick with someone who's going to help me out.
Well, she decided to not come to Victoria, so we did long distance for a little while. I think she said she needed to stay in Perth for a dog, which was her parents' dog. So just a nice way of her breaking up with me, I think.
Mate, I'm glad you're smiling, not crying. That's great.
No, that's fine. So moved over there, and I think with that, I was like, jeepers, I reckon I could leverage this into something. And then a couple of mates, we were sort of talking and came to the conclusion, it's like, it'd be really good is to run a small cap, like run a mining company, because, there's and no offense to anyone that's in the space at the moment, but, there's a lot of older guys that are not getting any younger, and, there needs to be a changing of the guard at some point. And, we're not the dumbest guys floating around, but we're also not the smartest, but we can certainly have a crack. So it was about then where I was like, yeah, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Like, I reckon I could have a crack at that. So went through BHP, learnt the corporate lingo, learnt how to kind of understand capital markets, learnt what it is to sell a story, learnt the fundamentals of corporate governance, and then, because you kind of get really good exposure to executives, board members, you get a great exposure to capital markets, bankers, the whole suite of the corporate sort of world you get an understanding of. And one of my old bosses said it's kind of like you're the CEO, but just in waiting. You're almost like a mini CEO. You've got to know everything about capital structure, the financing structure, the operations. You've got to know everything about everything and be able to sort of talk the story as well. So I took a big risk and moved down into the mid caps. I went to Oceana Gold, and so BHP into a $1 billion, a single $1 billion gold company. Remember, my boss at the time was just like, "What are you doing? Like, you've got such a great career ahead of you. Like, why are you moving into gold and why are you moving to the small caps?" And
what was gold then?
Oh, this was 2013, so it was like $1,500 or something. Like It was 1,200 maybe. And Oceana Gold sort of had assets that were in New Zealand and the Philippines.
Waihi Gold and
Macraes
down south there.
Yeah, so just bought Waihi. Macraes had been going for a while, and the Philippines was going quite nicely. So moved there for a couple of years, got a real taste for capital markets, and it was actually reasonably good at my role, I think. I met my partner, not my current partner, but my partner over there in Victoria. We fell pregnant and we decided to move back to Perth because my family's here and we've got a lot more support. Her family's rural Victoria, sort of Portland, Warrnambool area. So we moved back to Perth and I got a job with Mod Resources, which was really small cap. It was sort of $30-50 million market cap over in Botswana. They had a huge land holding in Botswana. And I saw this and I was like, oh, this could actually be $1 billion project in the next 5 years.
What are you looking at? What are you looking at to change it, to look at a company and go, well, this is a $50 million market cap, and what do I look at to turn it into $1 billion?
I think it was. I mean, with today, there's just no copper exploration. There's nothing floating around like
there needs to be.
Absolutely needs to be. And so it was a couple of guys, a couple of fund managers. I'd spoken to them about it, and they're like, "Yeah, this is good." Oz Super was a major shareholder, and obviously they're a lot smarter than I am, so leveraged a bit of their knowledge and was like, if they're major shareholders, they're not going to back something that's not going to perform. And then got into the crux of it and started looking at it. The scale of the asset was huge. The land holding was massive. Julian Hanna was the managing director, and he found Western Areas, or he was one of the founders of Western Areas. Mark Clements was the chair, and he's also been involved in a lot of really successful businesses at that time. So when I kind of look at companies, I look at the board, the capital structure, and major shareholders, and the project. Project changes with juniors, so you don't necessarily need to look at that. But if those first three things are really looking strong and kind of tick all the boxes, then the project doesn't really matter. But this one, the project stacked up because they had some really good intersections. The project was going to be developed as a small project and then an expansion scale. So I was like, fast forward five years, this could be something. So convinced my other half to shift over here because she moved here with one of her boyfriends way back in the 2000s, and she lived up in I think it was Quinns Rocks, and she was
my gosh,
yeah. So
she would have been like, I'm moving back to a desolate landscape.
She was
with a beautiful beach.
She's like, I'm not coming back to Perth. Like that place it's not for me. Managed to convince her and sort of as a part of the deal.
Take her on a trip over here? Like, let's go check it out?
We did. Yeah, we came over a couple of times. But the deal was if we come back here, we've got to be close to the beach. So kind of shot myself in the foot on that one. So we moved into West Leederville and then eventually where we are now. But so convinced her to move back to Perth, and it's nice and easy in Perth. The beaches are great. The people are great.
Yeah.
And if you're in mining, this is the place to be. And so my aspiration was to, get the exposure at Mod, ride that through to $1 billion and see where we go. And the more I kind of thought it through, I was like, this is a great platform to then move into becoming a CEO of a small cap.
Yep.
So came over, the asset was amazing. Unfortunately for me and what I was looking for, we sold it to Sandfire sort of 9 months later. So the market just wasn't there. Copper and exploration companies were on the nose, and having to raise capital was really challenging. So it was more value accretive for our shareholders to be a part of Sandfire. And great move. And I caught up with Brendan Harris not long ago, and I kind of told him that story, and he was like, "Oh, well, you buggered up on that one, Jeff, because it's a $2 billion asset now." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, great." So that was kind of my first taste of the junior space.
Yep.
And then I sort of moved into Argonaut for a little while and covered some of the junior stocks there. And again,
what a company, mate! I actually a couple of weeks ago met Eddie.
Oh yeah,
for the first time.
Yep.
And he told me the story. I've actually got him. Wow, when I say I've got him coming on the podcast, he said yes, but he's so busy, and he's got a story for every occasion. Loves horse racing. He's an absolute legend. But the story of him building Argonaut is shit. That's a story that needs to be told.
Yeah, no, I'd definitely tune in for that one because I mean where they are now. It's just amazing.
Yeah. Liam Twigger, he's awesome.
Yeah.
Bloody awesome bloke as well.
Yeah. No, they've attracted some really good talent.
You enjoy your time there?
Yeah. No, it was just after, well, it was actually just as COVID was starting. So that was
2019.
Yeah. So I was there for maybe 3 or 4 months as that kind of all kicked off. And then a role in the BHP business development department came up, and this was so when I joined BHP way back when in the 2000s. This was like the pinnacle of BHP. If you're in, it was called Portfolio Strategy and Development. These are the guys that look after BD. They look after capital allocation, investments. These are the smartest people in the room, and that was always I was like, that's where I want to be.
That's the room you want to be in.
Absolutely. So really gave it everything and got a role in that department. And it was again, I was working with the smartest people, and so I was always sort of in the background. I don't belong here, and was there for a period of time, and it was such a great experience and gave such great exposure, and that set me up for, I guess, where I am now, and it really helped shape what I'm doing now. And gave me the leverage to step into some of these positions over the last couple of years that I've been in. So, I think every role has given me something that has helped progress me towards where I am now.
Yep.
And, again, I think just right place, right time.
Who approached you about, segue, Alicanto Minerals.
Yes.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to talk about.
Fast forward to where we are today.
You're new to the role. Like it's January. January you were appointed managing director, CEO?
So CEO. I signed in November, and at that time Alicanto was a relative shell. It had Swedish assets, and we were looking at
assets,
opportunities.
but not using them.
Oh,
right? They're on the books. No one's doing anything with them.
I think they're good assets, but they're just not of the scale of what we were looking for.
Okay.
So, look, I'll go back to how did I get this role? So when I left, or as I was sort of leaving Perenti, I was looking for an executive role. And I'd been in Perenti Mining Services for 3 years, sort of just under executive level. And I was like, I really want to push for an exec role.
How do you do that?
I don't know. That's why I wasn't quite sure. I had no idea.
So white collar recruitment, do you go and see a recruitment company and say, or are you just hoping that someone's going to come and shoulder tap you?
Nah, well, I mean, the way I'd sort of done it is, like, I've been speaking to people probably on this for years, just cold calling. And I remember, now Dave Southam works in the office that we're in. And I remember cold calling Dave Southam, just saying, mate, do you want to grab a coffee? I just want to talk about the mining space. I want to talk about the executive roles. How do you get into these exec roles? It was just kind of talking. And eventually I think you manifest it. It's like, if you build it, they will come. You kind of just talk about it enough, tell people enough that this is happening, and it kind of just changes the pathway that you're on and kind of drives you towards that outcome that you've been telling so many people about. And you almost talk about it in a way that
happens.
It has to happen. So it's kind of, I'd been doing that since the mod years, and I was like really trying to figure out how to get into the small cap space to run a company. And I'd seen Steve at conferences and heard of him. And as I was kind of going through the process with Regis, I reached out to Steve and said, "Oh, mate, you've got some cracking assets. Really like to understand what you're doing, and if there's a way I could be a part of it in any way, shape, or form." So we met, and I was kind of starting down that process, but then Regis offered, and I had to pull out of that conversation, but still kept in contact. And then I had a lunch with one of the guys in sort of research at Canaccord, and he was like, "What do you want to do, mate?" I was like, "I want to run a company. Like, I've just got to find the right company." And I gave that thing like board, capital structure, shareholders. That's what I'm looking for. And he was like, I think Steve Parsons and the Richardson Street Group might have something. So that started the conversation with them, and it kind of naturally progressed. And I think they did the background checks in the market, and I think I had a pretty good network of people in the market that knew what I was capable of, knew me enough to kind of give me reference checks, and I checked out okay. And then so in November they said, "Oh, look, Alicanto, what do you think?"
Sounds like a corporate police check.
Yeah, it kind of was. Yeah, doing the background check of just, kind of, I think those are the people that, if you can speak to your mates and the people that you know really well and say, "Oh, what do you think about this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, mate, don't worry about it."
Yeah. There's lots of that in the mining industry. There is lots
of that.
You got to go down to any old bloody pub and
So that was a good endorsement for what my reputation, I guess, and so I signed in November. We have Swedish assets, and look, they were just not core. And the way that the group work is they're really good at finding brownfields assets.
Okay,
so they find brownfields assets, they capitalize it well, market it well, bring new people in, and effectively they just go from whatever the value of the shell was to re-rate, and they expand these assets, they drill, they expand, they drill, they expand, they drill, they expand, and then eventually it becomes of scale. And there's a number of different examples where they in the group they've been able to bring company changing assets into a maybe a shell or whatever it looks like, and then grow them into $1 billion assets. So they did that with Bellevue. So Steve and Ray Shorrocks were sort of the founding members of Bellevue, where it was Drag Resources. Steve came in, and then they vended in the Bellevue asset, went from a $5 million shell now to a $2.5 billion asset. So that started the journey, and then they did it with Cygnus. They've done it with Firefly, which was Orteco before. They've done it with Andy, and they've just done it so many times, and they know how to find a good asset, and they know what the market wants.
Sounds like I need to get them on here.
Yeah, mate. They're the stories that they must have. So
Amazing.
Steve and Mike are just really they know how. So Steve's a geologist and Mike's a finance guy, and they work together at Griffin, and then also they've got Sam Brooks, who also worked with them back at Griffin. He used to be the chief geo for Bellevue. And he was also at Bellevue from the early days. And so they know how to find assets, structure things well, and build companies. And they know how to bring people in to complement those assets and build them in. And so, that's where I came in. So I signed in November. December, Westgold kind of came knocking and had a process to run for the Mount Henry project. We got everything done in 2 weeks, made them an offer they couldn't refuse. They came on board at a 20% shareholding, and they've made a pretty good return on those 20%. It's now worth sort of 60 or 70 million bucks versus the 20 million bucks that they had. So they're shareholders, and we're drilling, we're looking at expanding, and the asset's absolutely amazing. The geos get a little bit frothy in the side of the lips when they start talking about it, and their hand movements get a little bit more excited when they're talking about what this scale could be.
What is the scale?
Oh, look, we don't know yet. So the good thing about this asset is that it's kind of the Stephen Bradbury. It's been at the back of the pack. It's been in people's portfolios for 30 odd years. It's been drilled very lightly down to about 100 metres. And in that 100 metres across 3 deposits, we've defined nearly 1 million ounces of gold. So you kind of then go, well, if we do the same for the next 100, can we find another 1 million? And how deep can that go? Westgold have got a contingent payment saying that on the definition of 2 million ounces, we get another $10 million. So,
what's your drilling program look like?
We've got 50,000 metres, so we'll be drilling 50,000 metres this year. To contextualise it, there's only been 150,000 metres drilled over the last 30 years.
Wow. Okay.
So we're doing 30% of that in 12 months.
Awesome.
So yeah, look, it's really exciting, and we got the keys in February, and then within a couple of weeks we had our first drill rig on site.
Awesome. What drilling company are you using?
We're using DDH,
Okay.
DDH1.
Yep.
They've got a couple of rigs that are heading out, and we're also using this another company called Seismic Drilling. So they've got a much smaller rig that's fantastic rig. So we expect to have 3 diamond rigs out fairly shortly, with a 4th coming before the end of the quarter as well. So
what do you want that drilling program to prove in the next 12 months?
Oh, mate, we just want to. I guess we just want to show that this thing keeps going. So we have a view of what the scale could be internally, and we just want to make incremental steps to see, what the scale of this asset could be. So, first assays are due out, before the end of this quarter. We just want, so we're not doing infill, we're doing step outs. So 40 metres, 80 metres, and we're just looking to extend that ore body. So, trying to see how deep this goes, see how big it can be. This was studied back in 2016. There was a DFS out, showed that on current 900,000 ounces, it could go through a 3 million tonne process plant, produce 120,000 ounces for 7.5 years. So we could realistically just refresh that DFS and kind of move down that pathway.
What does that look like, getting a processing plant? There's obviously Mount Henry, you've got Pentoro Gold as a processing plant in close proximity.
Yeah.
Actually, in the news a couple of weeks ago, it was our good friends Mega Resources signed a deal to, I think from their forest state, they're going to be working together and running their ore through toll treating through Pentoro Gold. That's not something that you'd look at?
We want to extract as much value from this asset as we can. So, if there's a way to maximise value for shareholders by, some kind of agreement there, then we'd look at it. We do have 1 million tonnes stockpile material on the ROM, which gives us about 20,000 ounces of contained metal. That's about $140 million of value sitting on the ROM there that we could look to monetize, or we could use that as sort of commencement feed for process plant down the track. So gives us optionality. What
studies have you done to look at building a processing plant next to Mount Henry?
Mate, we've had it for 3 months, so we haven't started that one.
People would have spoken about it.
Yeah. So we've got 3 deposits. So we've got this 16.
You're not allowed to speak about it. Is that what it is?
No. I can speak about it.
Okay.
So we've got 16 kilometres of this mineralised trend that we're drilling through, or that we're going to be looking at.
You got pictures of it?
I do.
Great. I'll chuck it up there.
Yep.
Somewhere.
So we'll explore that trend. So we've got Mount Henry as a deposit which sits sort of towards the north, which is 230,000 ounces of gold, drilled to about 100 metres. The next one down is Selene, which has 650,000 ounces. Really nice, thick Carla Winder-esque style deposit, flat dipping, 20 degrees, 40 to 50 metres thick, consistent grade of 1.1 all the way through. So that's
high grade
exactly.
today.
So it makes sense to have the process plant down near Selene, which is sort of in the middle of that mineralised corridor. And we've got land to do that. So that could theoretically be where the process plant sits.
So you're not right now, but the conversation would be, how big of a processing plant do we need to build?
It's how big's the ore, how much ore do we have? That's
to feed it.
Yeah. So if we grow this up to a scale, so that study said a 3 million tonne process plant for what we've got would be suitable. So, if we get 2-3 million ounces, that'd probably be fine. Anything larger than that, we'd start looking at larger plants. So, that's the whole sort of thesis of what we're doing, is we're not going to be constrained by saying we have to go down this pathway of looking at this plant, looking at this time frame. We're going to drill this thing, see how big it is, and then let the ore bodies tell us what we need to do to maximise value from it. So that's the really exciting part of this, is that, we already have a starter of 1 million ounces. So on its own, 120,000 ounces a year. If you kind of comp that against anyone else, that's a couple of $1 billion worth of market cap sitting right there. So,
you're going to get you're going to get to your goal, mate.
Absolutely.
Aren't you?
Yeah,
I can see that.
$1 billion asset.
100%.
Absolutely. But then if we then go, right, so the next step, if we hit that milestone of 2 million ounces for the Westgold payment, kind of get that, then you go, all right, well, maybe if 75% of that makes it into reserve, what could that look like? And conceptually, that's 150, 170,000 ounces. 1.7, 1.5 million ounces contain gold. Then stick that through a process plant. If you get between 120 and 150,000 ounces a year for 10 years, that's pretty bloody fantastic. That's then $4 to $5 billion. So
it wasn't too long ago that mining companies were just looking at 2 to 3 years ahead, and we hear it so much now, where mining companies are looking to retain and build on assets that are looking at 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
That's better for investors to look
Absolutely.
at, rather than thinking, shit, we've got to follow this quite closely. You go, well, this is our ore reserve for the next 10 years. Put your money in. Don't worry about it. We'll look after it.
Yeah, and look, I think the credibility of the group is that they've done this before. They know how to do it. There's so many people. I think there's 50 people in our office across 9 other companies. And so the wealth of knowledge that sits behind these businesses is absolutely phenomenal. There's really good geos, really good finance people, really good legal team, really good capital markets people. Everybody is working towards a shared goal of just making sure that these companies are the best they can be. So, I think you kind of look at why are these successful versus some other companies that might sort of falter or flounder around for a little while, is that we sit with so many people that you can just energize yourself in a conversation. You can be having a terrible day, but you can move to somewhere else and someone's having a fantastic day, or someone's having a worse day. So you're not in this echo chamber of sort of despair where you've got no one else to talk to, and you've just got so many people to leverage information off and have conversations with and learn. So I think that's also one of the strengths of, why do we think that we're successful? We've done it before so many times. There's that many people in the business or in the building that know how to do it, that, if you need advice, they're all open to having conversations. And sure as, the sun rises, is that they've done it before. And so you're never sitting there just contemplating and cogitating on something that you can't resolve. There's always a way to resolve it in the building.
Mate, what do you think makes a good bloody mining company investable right now?
There's
so many to choose from.
Exactly. There's a huge number of sort of small caps, mid caps to choose from. I think what makes us attractive is the Mount Henry story hasn't been told before. As I said, it's the Stephen Bradbury. It's been in people's portfolios, but sort of asset number 10 or 12 or whatever it is. So people haven't allocated capital to it. People haven't told the story of Mount Henry yet. So it's almost coming out as a fresh-faced asset that nobody's heard about, that has 1 million ounces from day one. So, you've got gold from surface. You've got a very simple plan to extend the resource base. It's in a jurisdiction that everybody knows and everybody loves, surrounded by mining service towns. We've got really great infrastructure. The board's done it before. The consultants that we've got on board have done it before. So if you're looking from a risk perspective, and if you're an investor trying to think, how do I weigh this up versus some of the other opportunities out there, it's, well, what's the only risk you're looking at? It's kind of market risk. And what's going to happen to the gold price? Well, we can't control that. The controllables that we have, that we can kind of shuffle the plates around, we've kind of got all of the risks really well controlled. We've got great contractors, we've got really good people coming on board. And if you kind of dig a little bit deeper, you'll see that most of the people that are coming in have some connection to Bellevue, where they've worked with Bellevue before, or they've sort of worked with the people in the group before. So, we've got really high quality people coming on. The asset's a really great asset. It's in a great jurisdiction. It's permitted. We've got mining licenses. So we're not waiting around for the department to say, you've ticked all the boxes and you can move on to the next phase. We're running. So
beautiful.
The risk, it's the risk that you kind of look at and we kind of go, well, it's just really what's the market risk.
Mate, hit me with the next 12 to 18 month action plan.
Pretty action packed, I think. We're drilling, so we've got 50,000 meters of drilling. That will keep us fairly busy. We've got resource updates coming through. I'd imagine we'll look towards the end of the year for a resource update. But we've also got notionally one scheduled in for mid-year. I think there's a lot of work that we're doing in the background to try to get the business to a place that it needs to be an ASX 200 listed company. So, we're bringing in the right people. We're recruiting for some executive roles at the moment. We're building out the geo team. The assays will tell the story. We've drilled a few holes now, and we're hitting what we thought we were going to hit. So that the model is being sort of verified by the drill results. Well, by the core. So we just got to wait for the assays to see what the grade is and see how it's grading. So didn't want to put out assays one hole at a time because we want to put out a batch of assays so that the market can go, geez, that looks pretty good. And that they can see that each of the step outs are hitting what we thought and that they are mineralized. So that's the thought process. So it's probably every 6 weeks we'll get into a cadence of releasing results. And then we'll just see what happens on the corporate front. We're busy beavers behind the doors. So look, it'll be a consistent flow of results. We're marketing pretty regularly, so there's a lot of conferences, both domestically and internationally, that we're getting out to, mainly because the story hasn't been told. So it's
an amazing story.
Yeah.
I look forward to watching it.
It's a really good story. Yeah. There's there's outside of just being a really good opportunity for creating shareholder value. It's the people that we're getting in are also just so aligned with us from a cultural perspective. They all are hungry. They want to have a crack. They like to have a good time. We're all really aligned on the outcome of what we're driving from both a cultural perspective and also from a business perspective.
So important.
So really is.
Really
it really
important.
is. So we've spent the time to get the right people. And the market's pretty tight at the moment, which is making it a lot harder. But we're not going to sacrifice quality for speed. We need to make sure we do things right. As I said, we're setting this up for a company that's going to be around for 10 years. That's going to be an ASX 200 listed entity. At some point, that's kind of the goal. We want to make sure that we're there and that it's fit for purpose as we kind of expand and modularize. So it's a really exciting opportunity to be a part of something that will be around for a long time. That's a high quality asset.
Do you get to with Westgold investment? Do you get to lean on and have bloody Wayne Bramwell on speed dial?
Yeah, Wayne and I have had a couple of conversations.
Awesome. Yeah, he's a good bloke, eh?
Yeah, really, really nice guy, really great guy. And they're good to deal with. We found them. They know what they want. They're commercial, but they also understand that this is going to be valuable for them. They're going to make a lot of money from their equity holding, and so look, support is there. And
I've already done that.
Yeah, no, they have, but there's plenty more to squeeze out of it. And so, the offer of look, if you need help with diesel or rigs or whatever it is, just let us know. So that
Awesome.
he's always there for a call, for a chat. He's never unreachable. He's never terse. He's always got time. And I think you spoke about Brendan. It's Valiant is another product of Westgold, and so it's kind of Westgold investing in the future of Definitely. The next round of senior leaders in the business.
I see that with Wayne and his involvement and he loves it. He loves the industry. His involvement in the gold industry group.
Yeah,
what a fantastic bloke. Yeah, mate. Look. Thanks very much. I can't wait to show you that even though I didn't ask you bugger all questions, you rolled through everything that I wanted to ask you anyway.
Beauty.
So thanks very much for coming on, spending the time with me. I know you're a bloody busy man. in these early stages, and I just want to let you know, you already know this, but you're only going to get busier.
Yeah, no, that's good. The family love to hear that one.
Yeah.
And mate, thanks for having us on board.
Oh, not a problem.
Yeah,
not a problem. I really enjoy it. I love learning about people, and I'm passionate about this industry. The mining industry is amazing. It's the lifeblood of this country, so we just need to keep supporting it. And I'll do my little bit. And thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the time.
Thanks very much for tuning into another episode on the Gold Room podcast. We've got some bloody ripper guests coming in the next few weeks, so stay tuned. Give us a bloody subscribe. It's a great help. Thank you.